and welcome to this week's Thrive Programme podcast. Today I'm joined by one of our Thrive Programme coaches, Philippa, who is going to talk about her favourite topic of language. Hi, Philippa.
Hi, Lucy. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good. So just to back up the bus a little bit. So when we teach people to thrive, we're teaching them about mental health, about all the components and all the things, the cogs that work in their brain and how they manage everything. And one of those things is the language that we use, the language that we choose. And I know that this is your favourite subject, isn't it? It's your favourite chapter.
It is.
Why is that?
Well, it's such an important part of the programme. You know, it is one of the things, but it runs through everything, I think. We address it right from the start of the programme, you know, when we talk about inner voice, but it's so evocative and it paints really powerful pictures in our minds. And because of that, it creates some very, very strong emotions. Obviously, when we talk about language, it's twofold. You know, we're talking about the language we speak out loud, but also the language of your thoughts, your inner voice. So it's something that it's really, really easy to create coping skills by just really small tweaks in your language. And I think it's sometimes a little bit overlooked as a chapter, so I really like to focus on it. How you talk to yourself generally has a huge, huge effect on your mental health. And having this kind, nurturing, supportive inner voice, it's really fundamental to thriving. And I actually believe, you know, you almost can't thrive if you don't address this part of the program. It makes all the difference. I think it plays a huge part in how quickly somebody overcomes their symptoms.
Yeah. So question right off the bat then. Sometimes clients will say, I don't have an inner voice, or I don't know what thoughts I have. I've got my way of explaining that, but how would you help somebody to tune into that?
It's a really good question. And I've got a client at the moment who said that. You know, we came to session 1, we talked about inner voice, and she said, I just didn't write anything for this because I don't have one. And, you know, so it is something that's quite common because people just think that's them, that's who they are, that's how they think, it's not anything that's running through their minds that's different. So how I say that, or how I get them to try and listen to it, is just ask, right, when do you have a bit of time to yourself? You know, do you commute? When do you actually process the day? And this particular client said, no, I do commute. That's when I think about what's going on. So I said, right, when you're commuting, just like kind of be a bit of a detective of your thoughts. What are you actually thinking? You know, obviously she was driving the car, so she couldn't write down what she was thinking at that point. But I try and get people to write down things from time to time. You know, write down, listen in, very, very, very specifically listen to what you're saying to yourself. You know, just almost stop and be really. It's not about what's happened in the past. It's not about what's going on in the future. It's about what you're saying to yourself in the here and now. So it's very much the language of your thoughts. That's how I would describe it to somebody, because it really is. It's a different language, and it's 90% of our thoughts are subconscious, right? So and that can be quite overwhelming for people to think, God, how the hell do I get into those thoughts and, you know, control all those thoughts that are going on? Well, first of all, I'd always say it's not about controlling those thoughts. It's about controlling your response to those thoughts, but it's about listening to your inner voice. And really, if you can start to do that, then you can start to see exactly what's going on, and it gives away so much.
Yeah, for sure. And a good way of doing that is saying things like, right, if you were to think right now, you know, you and me, Philippa, let's go out for a 5K run.
Mm-hmm.
What does your inner voice say? What's that instant thought? Is it brilliant, or it's like absolutely no way? That gives you a bit of an idea, doesn't it? Or let's go for a quick ride in a plane. Let's go on a roller coaster. Let's go and do a talk in front of people.
Exactly.
Let's pick up the phone and ring that person you haven't spoken to for a long time.
Yeah.
Whatever your response in your head is to those things is an indication of, like you say, the language in your thinking. And that's the thing that you can change, but none of us are taught this in school or from anyone prior.
No.
So we just, you do, it is subconscious, right? It does feel automatic and things that we can't change.
So yeah, just starting to think that it is something that I have a choice in. And that the notion of choice that comes initially after the self-awareness, really, and after keying into your thoughts. And But noticing the way that you talk to yourself is really key in making those changes, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So starting to be aware then in the quiet times of the day and tuning in a little bit, being a bit aware of that sort of back chat or those ideas or the way that you respond to certain things in your head, that gives you an idea straight away then of what kind of an inner voice you have. Is it helpful?
Yeah.
Is it not helpful?
Definitely. And even if you have a strong reaction to something as well, that's a really good way of getting some information, this, of working out what's going on. I say this to all my clients, you have to be a bit of a detective of your thoughts. And when you start to notice them, you can say, right, well, what does that give away about how I'm thinking, what I'm feeling here? How is that affecting how I'm behaving? And you can really start keying into, identifying things. I think you and I both know it's the one big thing you can take from the program going forward is the ability to identify your limiting beliefs and change them. But this is really key in being able to identify them is listening to that inner voice and listening to what it's saying.
Yeah, yeah. A great way of being able to, as you said, to figure out what do I really believe about this and why.
Yeah.
And if that's not necessarily, it's not a fact, it's just my interpretation, my current understanding of things, doesn't mean it has to be the way I think going forward. So once somebody's become aware then, and they've got a bit of an idea about their limiting beliefs and helpful thoughts and unhelpful thoughts, what would be the next step?
Okay, so when you've got that awareness, it's being really conscious about it and it's being quite proactive. I always find that it's a game of two halves, really. The first bit is the noticing and the detectiveness, as we said. It's detectiveness. It's the being aware of what it is. But what you don't want to do is you don't want to fight that inner voice. So if you are hearing those negative things, and then you start to say to yourself, "Oh, but you shouldn't be saying those things." Oh, yeah, but you are saying your things. You get into this horrible big fight that you can never win. So it has to be quite separate. And this is how I try and explain it to clients that at the same time as the noticing that's going on, it's the increasing all the helpful, powerful, positive things and introducing some really useful things to say to yourself quite separately, really. It's a huge generalization as well, but I feel that men can find this really difficult, really clunky to listen into themselves or to be kind to themselves, to speak positively to themselves. So that's something I've noticed with male clients as opposed to female clients. But I would say there's a few different things that you can do. Calm language. Calm language is so key. We all have the ability to calm ourselves down by using calm language. Even when you feel really, really panicky, if you're in the depths of anxiety, if you speak to yourself in a calm way, you can calm your thoughts down. It's such a simple way of creating coping skills. So that would be something I talk to people about a lot. Confident language as well. Definitely, even if, and lots of people struggle with this because they say, I don't feel confident, they don't have that belief yet, and it doesn't matter. You're just, this is how you can start creating that. Speak to yourself in a confident way because when you can, if things feel predictable, you're making things happen. You feel more on top and in control of things by just quite simply talking to yourself in a confident, assertive way. And it really is very important because you're learning to support and encourage and reassure yourself, and using that kind of confident language is really key for that, so you don't feel as if you have to massively rely on other people to do that for you. You're learning to do that for yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
um,
As you're talking, I'm thinking about a client from a little while ago. I had a lovely teenager who
mhm,
had an eating disorder, and
mhm,
when she was sort of midway through, she started explaining it like her eating disorder voice, if you
yeah,
like, that sort
yeah,
of thing that had all the power and all the noise and was the thing that she listened to all the time, was starting to get a bit quieter,
yeah,
and actually her own sort of her own voice, her confident, powerful, capable voice was actually starting to be louder
mhm,
than the other one. And that was when she knew that she'd started overcoming it,
yeah,
find, because when that when you're able to feel powerful and think in a powerful way and think in a calm and confident way, even if you felt a bit anxious, even if you started worrying about something, you know that you've got that then, and then it's just really it's a snowball effect from there.
It is, and we talk about it a lot when we talk about desire for control, don't we? And the guard dog analogy, that's what's reminding me of now. And this being responsible for calming down your own personal guard dog, and that guard dog is there to look after you, and it's saying things, it's telling you you're in danger because it's trying to protect you. But you have to be the one at that moment to actually go, no, we're fine. You're absolutely fine here. This is not nice. This doesn't feel good, but we can do this. And as soon as you can start to talk to yourself in that way, you can start to feel more powerful about things. And it has, like you said, this lovely snowball effect.
Yeah. And that's what you said before, isn't it? Around you can feel anxious, but you can make yourself feel calm about feeling anxious. You can almost kind of have two emotions, but it's how you respond to the fact that you're feeling a bit anxious.
Yeah.
You can either make yourself anxious about feeling anxious and it spirals, or you can develop that calmness and in control even though you're feeling a bit anxious, and that's the key.
Definitely. Another thing I would say is forward thinking language as well, for people who are maybe in the middle of the program, or if they're having a big blip. It feels all of a sudden they revert to old habits of language, and a lot of brooding, a lot of what if this. But again, it's okay, calm the language, but things are changing. This is just a blip. Sorry, that's my phone alarm. Just turn that off. It's things are changing. I'm doing this. This is a really predictable program. A lot of these habits of language do overlap. You're not just using calm, you're using the confident, you're using the kind, but introducing forward thinking languages. How are things going to be in a few weeks' time? How are things going to be in 6 months if I carry on with this? And it's really trying to step back and see the bigger picture when it comes to it. But if you speak to yourself like that, it can really help you do that.
Yeah, good tip. Very good, very good. So a few things to think about then, to take more of an active role, more of a conscious choice, rather than that sort of passive bystander role in what we're thinking and what we're feeling, actually actively thinking things that help us feel more calm, more in control.
Definitely. That links to active language, doesn't it? That's something, really important. Active language that we talk about is positive but empowering language, and it's about language that helps you take control, and again helps you become more powerful by taking responsibility for your actions. Again, crucial to the notion of crucial to the language chapter really is this notion of choice and taking responsibility. By taking responsibility through your language, okay, you can take responsibility for your thoughts and feelings by using this active language. So rather than saying, work is making me so stressed, so stressed because of work, it's, okay, I'm allowing myself to be stressed by work at the moment. And sometimes that can feel a real slap in the face, can't it? Because you're like, oh, I don't want to be doing this. But it's just that, stop, no, I am not, this isn't happening to me. This is not external. This is the way that I am thinking about that. And I try and get all my clients to do this, actually, and it sounds really convoluted and contrived initially, but I'm like, no, speak like this for at least a week or two. I'm allowing myself to be cross about this. I'm choosing to be stressed by this. I'm creating anxiety about this, because it just reminds you that you can choose differently, even if you have to do this a lot of the time in retrospect, and by doing it and then going, oh yeah, I'm choosing this, and then changing it. Eventually, if you take that responsibility, then you'll start to make better choices.
Yeah. Well, because then you can then add on, right, so what I'm going to do instead is take some time to think about it like this, or take a step back and get some perspective, or actually realize I've got to learn some better ways of dealing with this situation.
Yeah.
So that's what I'll work on over the next couple of weeks. So it's turning it into something as well that you can learn from and do differently, or develop or strengthen.
Yeah, definitely. Because yes, if you're just saying, I'm allowing myself to do this, I'm choosing to do this, it could be another way of beating yourself up with a big stick. So yeah, it's changing it from from passive language, which is the powerless language, which is the language where you don't feel in control of things and you're thinking that things happen to you. Changing that, but also making it helpful and positive as well, and reminding yourself what you want to do differently.
Yeah. So let's say somebody's at the moment in the depths of depression or emetophobia or an eating disorder or big anxiety. So on a daily basis, their thinking and their language isn't particularly helpful. What's the first step? Like where do you start? Do you start first thing in the morning? Do you set reminders around? Like how do you help people to take control, start taking
So,
responsibility?
post-its, post-it notes everywhere, put them up, just reminders of some key phrases that I get people to, that come up that are in the book, but also things that that they can do very easily, but they have to remember, it's a consciously putting them into your mind. We all know that we have this negativity bias, we have this focus on thinking what's not going well. If you are in that, that anxious pattern, it can feel very automatic. So you have to like almost stop yourself in your tracks, right, and remember things. One of the things I get my clients to say, even from the initial consult, if they, before they've even started the program, if they are feeling really anxious, I will get them to say this one phrase, which is, it doesn't matter if X happens, I will cope with it. They don't know this before they've started the program, but you and I both know that this is so important, because when it comes to coping skills, the research suggests it's not the amount of coping skills or the coping skills that you have that the most important thing. It's the belief that you can cope no matter what. So if you say that small phrase to yourself over and over again, whenever you're feeling anxious or wherever you're feeling bad about things, it doesn't matter if X happens. It doesn't matter if I'm sick, if you're in emetophobia. It doesn't matter if, I touch that thing. I will cope with it. Probably won't believe it initially, but again, you're starting to create that belief in your coping skills that you will cope no matter what. And the more you say that to yourself, the better you feel. And I often ask people, even when they start session one, if they've started to use that, and they're like, oh yeah, I have, and it has really helped. So that is something really simple that you can do. And even if you're saying that to yourself 100 times or more a day, that's going to help you feel better. And it's going to increase that belief in your coping skills.
Yeah, because the opposite is, oh my gosh, I wouldn't cope
Yeah.
if, or that would be the worst thing in the world if. And an emetophobe with a 10 out of 10 phobia of being sick, of course they're not going to believe that they can cope. But if they're in the habit of saying I can cope about anything, like, oh my gosh, what if I'm late for this appointment? Okay, well, even if I'm late for this appointment, I'll cope, I'll handle it, I'll get through it, I'll figure out a way, I'll suck it up, I'll tolerate it, at making it feel like not the end of
Yeah.
the world. Then with the other evidence they have of being able to do that, actually then that has an effect on how they think they would cope with the big thing, the big 10 out of 10 thing.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. And we all know that it's those little controlling those small things or those other anxieties that they might not have come to see you for. By addressing those, then they're overcoming the big problem as well.
Yeah. So that's a good way of any of those what if thoughts, isn't it?
Yeah.
What if this happens?
Yeah.
That's our
So I've got a good one for the what ifs actually, because you hear a lot of what ifs, don't you? Your classic brooding, what if this, what if that, and that's a real pattern of language. So if you're in the habit of brooding, this one's for you. We know that brooding is all about control, right? So what if this, what if that? I'm trying to gain control by doing this. So this one sits well with brooders because you can replace that what if with, okay, what I'm going to do if that happens is this, because instantly it gives them a feeling of being more in control. They're focusing on the small things that they can do, i.e., their response to things. So you're giving them a plan as well, and breeders love a plan, right? So,
yeah.
but it's okay. Rather than these what ifs becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, it's okay. What I'm going to take the sting out. What I'm going to do if that happens is this, and then
Yeah. So it would be things like, oh my gosh, what if I'm late for that appointment? Or what if I get all embarrassed in the middle of that interview? What if I get overwhelmed in the middle of Tesco's? Well, what will I do if I feel a bit
Exactly.
overwhelmed in Tesco's? And now you're into, well, how would I cope with that?
Yeah.
You're into, right, well, I could come home, I could ring someone, I could just sit down, I could ask someone for help, and that's coping with the scenario, rather
Absolutely.
than will I cope, won't I cope, which is never helpful.
No, absolutely. Another one I think I use, I get people to say a lot, and this is very, very contrary to what they tell themselves a lot, is what if it all works out? So if you are in the habit of not feeling good enough, then this one's for you. If you're in the habit of worst case scenario thinking, this is also for you, because it's one of the most unhelpful things you can do. If you don't feel powerful about a situation and then what if this, what if that, what if this? Okay, you're just going to feel worse. You're filling your head full of really unhelpful thoughts and feelings as a result. And predictably, what's going to happen, you're going to create more stress and anxiety. So start to turn that on its head. What if it all works out? And some people, when you say that to them, are like, oh yeah. They're really flummoxed by this because they've never thought in that way at all. But as equally as, and that worst case scenario thinking is a lot of, it's a coping skill, right, that people have had up till now. They think that if they know what the worst thing is, then they can cope with it. What they don't realize is it's a very ineffective coping strategy because it just predictably creates that stress and anxiety. So, okay, think, what if it all works out? What if I can cope when I'm in the supermarket? What if I can stand up and do that presentation? What if it's good? What if it's not perfect? But what if it all works out and I really enjoy it? So that's
Yeah.
yeah,
A way of using your imagination, because you're right, that's that attempt to get some predictability over this unknown future event. Our brains kind of kid us into thinking that we can tell the future, that we can imagine what's going to happen. But of course, unless you've trained your imagination to look for the best and imagine the best, it's inevitably going to be doing the opposite. So you're just going through life imagining worst case,
yeah,
catastrophic scenario about everything, and then wondering why we're so super stressed the whole time.
yeah.
So yeah, what if it works out? What if it's all right? What if I come out and I feel really good?
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be a really nice way of just a reminder. Oh yeah, that might happen. Oh wow, I've never thought about that before. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
changing that. Like I said, it really does key into Curie's law and the power of your imagination, and you have to start imagining the best. But it's a big part of that.
yeah. Nice, very good,
Yes,
awesome.
yes.
What other little phrases do you use quite often?
Thoughts are not facts. That's a
Big
big
one.
one, isn't it? I've got that written here because I refer to this so many times. Sometimes with clients, I'm just like, there you go, remember that. Because off they go down the rabbit hole of thinking something else. But it is very much thoughts are not facts. You do not have to believe everything you think. And again, that's quite revelatory to people because they're just so used to believing what they're thinking and taking it as absolute gospel. But they're not facts at all. You really have to get into the habit of challenging that and asking yourself, is that true? Is that true? And if they say yes, is it absolutely true? Really challenging yourself. And then start delving further and holding yourself accountable for that. How do I feel when I have that thought? What is the outcome of believing that thought? And just, that reminder of what's going to happen if I go down this rabbit hole of thinking in the predictable way that I do. How would I feel if I didn't have that thought? We really model bad thinking. Society models bad thinking. It breeds these automatic negative thoughts. So you just do have to start remembering that there is a choice. That they're not facts. You don't have to believe them.
It's hard though, isn't it? I mean, I think this was the biggest thing for me, because when you're used to thinking a certain thing, and of course your emotions are backing up that thought, making it feel very real,
Yes.
in the moment it can be hard to begin with to be able to tell if it's real or just a perceived
Yeah.
threat, an imagined threat.
Yeah.
But I think that's where the Thrive program's great for that, because learning about how your mind works and the role of your guard dog, right, your desire for control, and separating yourself from the thoughts and feelings that you're creating,
Yeah.
is much easier than to be able to have that perspective of almost you're looking at yourself having these thoughts and feelings, and you can start to see that it's just your imagination doing that and creating that kind of feeling.
Definitely. And when you're saying that, what it's reminding me of is when you're very hypervigilant. And I remember that very much as well. You know, I had, once upon a time, I had huge health anxiety. And I just remember that hypervigilant cortisol flooding through your body and you believing that something really, is wrong with you. So when I have a client that's particularly hypervigilant, or when that's going on, I'll always get them to say, are you actually in danger here? Or is this just discomfort? Because we know 99% of the time it's probably just uncomfortable thoughts and feelings, but sometimes that can really help because your brain's telling you in that moment when you're believing your thoughts and you're creating all that emotion that you are actually in danger. So again, it can be really helpful to say, okay, am I actually in danger here, or is this just discomfort?
But often you don't know. And again, that's the point, isn't it? When you've got that strong desire for control, you don't know. You're not going to 100% know that this isn't the time you're about to be sick. This isn't the time you're about to pass out. This isn't the time that pain in your side isn't actually cancer.
Yeah.
But I think one of my clients at the moment, she's in a emetophobe, but her favourite phrase at the moment is, let's find out. Let's wait and see.
Okay.
It kind of opens up that, instead of that black and white thinking of I need to know, which drives us to kind of come up with that immediate solution as a way of protecting ourselves. It's like let's put it on the back burner for a second.
Yeah.
Let's figure it out. Let's see. Let's just give it 5 minutes and see how we feel then. And it's leaning into that vulnerability, allowing yourself to feel vulnerable, giving yourself permission to not know when your brain and body is screaming, this is danger, this is danger. But again, you can't just do that, can you, unless you've got that basic understanding of how you've created this symptom for yourself, the components of your thinking, that the way that your emotions are responses to the thoughts in your head. I think it's much easier to do that when you've got that understanding to begin with.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why, language is so crucial, and your knowledge and of understanding of these different techniques builds as you go through the program, and as you have more and more of an understanding about how and why you think in the way that you do. Going back to that discomfort and danger one, then I might use one of my other phrases again. Well, it doesn't matter. I'll cope. I'll cope, even if. But sometimes it can, that imminent danger of, am I really? Is this? Is just trying to get that sense of the bigger picture. Am I really in danger here? Even if I'm sick, am I really in danger? It's just questioning all the time. No, I just don't like this. This is really uncomfortable for me. But so leaning into that, tolerating that anxiety, is really important. And then obviously processing it really well after. That was really hard, but I did that. I coped with it. That's really important, as we know too.
Yeah, for sure. I'm remembering one of my phrases at the time would have been, I'm just going to trust my body about this. So rather than try and make sense and predict, am I about to be sick, or am I about to pass out, or am I about to have a heart attack? I would just it's almost like leaning in and just trusting that your body knows what to do, and whatever it needs to do in that situation, it's looking after me. So that was almost letting that control go a bit and just trusting the natural processes of whatever the body needs to do. And that was a big thing, because before then I was trying to control these things, which was never going to help.
Absolutely. And coming from a health anxiety background, you can't control everything that's in your body. You just have to cope. It's very much about the coping skills now. Okay, well, I wouldn't like it if that happened, but I would cope with it.
Yeah. So building trust in your body, building trust back in your own ability, in your own mind, and your building confidence that this is another thing that you can handle. It's not something you have to run away from or fix.
Absolutely.
Fab.
Some things that I think people should actually try and stop saying as well. Go through into some of those. So even if you feel terrible, don't say it. And this is a real pinch point with certain clients, because they're like, well, do I suppress myself? Am I not allowed to say how I'm feeling? And of course, it's not about that, but it's about, again, taking responsibility for how you feel. So if you feel terrible, you come in, so you've had a terrible day, you come in and rant about it. you're just making things worse, don't we know? If you're in this habit of over exaggerating things, and talking in a very over exaggerating way, you're just exaggerating the problem. And it reminds me of one particular client I had, and she was very, very dramatic in her language. And when we came to this part of the book, she was really grumpy about it. She was like, I just don't like this because this is who I am. This is how I speak, and I don't want to change that. I'm like, look, that's fine. It's entirely up to you. But it is about taking responsibility for how speaking in that way is actually making you feel worse. So it's very much, and it's one I use a lot personally. I've got two kids like you. Some days are challenging, we've got lots to work on. But even if I've had a really rubbish day, I will not say it because I know that I want to feel better at the end of the day, not worse. So I'll just say instead, I won't suppress it, but I will just say, today was really challenging. It was a really hard day, but it's over now, and I'll focus on something nice. Run myself a bath, maybe have a glass of wine. I'll just do something. I'll give myself a treat and just think, right, you've got through it now. Let's draw a line under it. It's over. Tomorrow's a new day.
Yeah, and it's a big thing of perspective, isn't
Yeah.
it? Because a bad day of having kids that do what kids do and juggling work and things, but you're not in a war zone.
No.
There's bad days and then there's like bad days.
Mm.
So actually being able to take a step back out of your own bad and thinking, well, in the context of what bad could be, this is it's tolerable, it's manageable, it's a good way of getting a bit of context, isn't it,
It
to how
is.
we're thinking and feeling about things.
It is. And how many times when people asked how they are, do they say, "Oh, I'm not too
Not bad.
bad, not too bad"? This is such a funny one because I lived in Paris as part of my degree, and there was some more people from uni who lived in Paris. And I went to their flat one night, and my friend Johnny answered the door, and Johnny said, he was a lovely guy, very well spoken. And I said, "Oh, hi, Johnny, how are you?" He's like, I'm very well, thank you, very well. And Johnny always said that. I didn't ever know Johnny when he wasn't feeling very well, actually, which is amazing. But it was so lovely. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, I feel nice now. I'm sure he isn't very well, but it had a lovely effect on me and how I felt. So I made a choice, funny enough, way before I did the program, to change my language when it came to that. And I said, I'm not going to say I'm okay or I'm not bad anymore. And I started to say I'm very well. I mean, I'm really good, thank you. And again, it just links to what you said before. It's all about perspective. It doesn't mean every day is amazing, but it is another day here. It's another day. And after I overcame anxiety myself, I thought a lot about how much time I've wasted being anxious. And so I don't have to do that anymore. And it's when I wake up and I say I'm really good, it's because I am feeling really good because I know how awful you can feel. So it's just that reminder that you're in control of your day.
100%. A difficult day now with kids and juggling is very different to a difficult day in the
Yeah.
midst of health
Yeah.
anxiety. So actually, in the context of bad days previously, this is an all right day,
Mm.
and actually a real life story. So I often think, if you ever spend time with an older person, they often have quite a good perspective on
Oh
things and a
yeah.
good way of. And I always think about my grandpa before he died, had one leg that wasn't great or one hip that wasn't great, and he would always just make a joke and say, "Well, actually, the other one works fine." And it was his way of just coping with that, and actually making light of the situation was a good coping skill. But my nana, who I spent time with over Easter, is 99,
Oh.
and I was sitting next to her at the having an Easter Sunday roast, and she dropped a spoon in her lap, and it made a bit of a mess on her trousers. And I said, "Oh, are you okay, Nana?" And she looked at me and she said, "Lucy, I'm alive. I'm still alive. I've got another day." And it was her way of saying, I'm really not going to be bothered about that, because in the context of things, I'm 99 years old. I'm sitting in the middle of Devon around my family. Life is great.
Yeah, it's so lovely, isn't it? It really is. Um, yeah, I think my kids will vouch for the fact that if something, if there's a situation at home or if they're being a bit challenging, I'll sometimes just say, "Look, nobody's died. Everyone's okay." Just
Yeah.
that. Come on, it's all right.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah,
not the end of the
no,
world. Yeah,
it's not.
I think that we often say when you have those big big emotions, you want to reserve those big emotions for the times in life when a big emotion is required, if any. Like, when is it ever really, where we live, certainly over in the UK, in the Western world, where we're not struggling with things that many people are in the scheme of things.
Mm,
Actually, is there ever a time to feel one of those big emotions anymore?
absolutely, absolutely. Um, Something else I try and get clients not to say as well is a dirty word. Should.
Mm-hmm.
Should. It's funny because again, I don't mind swearing, and my kids will vouch for that. But they know I don't like the word should. Should is it's so linked to perfectionism, isn't it? It's very
Yeah,
much just an excuse to make yourself feel rubbish and
yeah,
to negatively affect your self-esteem. You're judging yourself really harshly. I should be doing the washing, I should be mowing the lawn, I should be doing more work, I should be spending more time with the kids. So get rid of should. That would be a big
yeah.
piece of advice. Should can always be could as well, just to remind you you've got a choice. So I should be doing the washing, or I could be doing the washing, but I've had a really busy day. I'm going to put my feet up, I'm going to watch a bit of TV, I'll do the washing can wait. Rather
Mm-hmm.
than beating yourself up with a big stick, it's like, okay, my choice, making you feel a bit
Yeah.
more empowered.
100%, 100%. I hear it a lot, particularly at the moment, A levels and GCSEs happening with the teens. Should have done more revision.
Mm,
Should have spent some Saturday doing that rather than taking the dog out or whatever. And actually, well, you can't change that now.
mm,
But that judgment, that expectation that you put on yourself that I didn't do good enough. Yeah, we're human beings.
mm. It's such a
Could have
pervasive,
done some more.
such a pervasive belief system, isn't it? That the I,
Mm,
not quite doing enough, not quite good enough. So it's a real
mm,
big one to watch actually. And if you notice yourself saying a lots of shoulds, be curious. Okay, try and use could instead. Try not to beat
mm,
yourself up and chip away at your self-esteem.
mm, Nice, nice.
One more.
Yeah.
That or they made me feel like X. How many times we hear that as well? That made me stressed. Work's made me really stressed. That thing they said made me really upset. Just a reminder that that's incredibly external and that nobody makes you feel anything without you allowing it to. We really don't want to give power over our thoughts and feelings away to someone or something external. And I'm not saying that you don't have the right to feel something because of what somebody said or something that's happened, but you can always choose your response to it. This one is really hard again, I think. I'm not saying that in a disempowering way, but it's one that if people are not getting it right, I want them to just keep going, keep practicing your response to things, even if it's afterwards when you say, oh, how would I like to have done that differently? And just that reminder that in that split second between something happening and you feeling something, there is a thought, and it's those thoughts that create your feelings. So reminding yourself that you have a choice, that you can take a breath, that you can respond differently, even if it's afterwards, can then again help prime your brain into thinking, how do I want to respond in those moments? How can I, get this space? How can I enlarge this space a little bit, take a few more minutes before I react to something? It's very much responding rather than reacting. Might not be easy, but if you practice, it can
Mm.
really change things.
Yeah, so slowing it down a bit and giving
Mm,
yourself think, it's almost a bit like a game, isn't it? Where something happens or someone says something and you can go, all right, that's that.
yeah,
But my responsibility now is in what I do
yeah,
as a result of that, how I think now, whether I brood about it, whether I get over it quickly, whether I say something, whether I don't.
yeah, absolutely. And I get clients to very much just shift ever so slightly. So rather than saying work's made me stressed, I'm feeling stressed about work, or I'm choosing to feel stressed.
Mm,
It's that active language as well. Again,
mm,
or somebody upset me. Rather than that, you just say, I felt upset by what they said. And they're really, it's exactly the same, but it's just feeling a bit more in control. And
yeah.
that's your choice. And just reminding yourself about that space and that you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you can ask yourself, is this an appropriate feeling to be creating? Is this
Yeah.
an appropriate response? Or actually, if I look at my habits so far, I know I'm in the habit of overreacting to worrying about what other people think, for example. So actually I need to bring that reaction down a bit. So how can I be a bit less bothered by this? How can I be a bit calm? How could I think about this in a different way that makes me feel better about myself? You're kind of coaching yourself, aren't you, with that inquiry about things rather than just taking it as a given.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think on the back of that, a good one for parents, I know kids will often say, I feel like XX. I feel like science is going to be boring tomorrow. I feel like I'm going to be sick today. When actually that's a perception, isn't it? Or it's a future telling. It's really, they use the word feel, but what they're really going is, I'm thinking about science tomorrow.
Yeah,
I'm thinking science is going to be. I'm thinking a thought right
yeah,
now that science is going to be boring tomorrow.
yeah,
And again, once you sort of help them understand what they're doing, it's not an accurate prediction. It's just they're thinking about it in that way right now.
yeah, yeah,
It
absolutely.
can change it.
Sometimes you hear a lot, I'm anxious, I'm an anxious person, as if, the labeling issue, and that obviously comes into language as well. People like to label themselves. I see this a lot with teenagers as well at the moment, and it's almost like anxiety is a badge of honor or expected now after COVID and this and that. So it's, I'm anxious. My child is anxious. It's like, well, they're not actually anxious, and even saying that with that language is really unhelpful because they're feeling anxious, or it's not who they are, first of all. But anxiety is an emotion. It's a very valid emotion. It's useful. It's always thought of as something bad. But just even saying my child is feeling anxious rather than they are anxious and labeling can be helpful. Just to
Yeah.
separate the thing from the feeling and the actual way it's produced. And obviously, when they know
Yeah,
more about that, then it's helpful.
for sure. And that makes it more empowering, because even if I might feel anxious on a daily basis, if I know it's my thinking that's driving that,
Yeah,
then that's something I can change. That,
yeah,
that I can chip away at that. I can start learning different skills and changing beliefs and changing my language
yeah. And
to make things feel a bit
and
easier.
that's when the step further on from that would be, I'm choosing to feel anxious. And again, I think when my coach said that to me, I was like, no, I'm not.
How dare
I'm not
you?
choosing to feel anxious. I'm actually come here because, I'm feeling this is horrible and you're supposed to be helping me sort this out. But I didn't understand at this point, and even though it was this big slap in the face, it's the most empowering thing in the world, isn't it? Because if you realize that you're choosing to do something, irrespective of how you've done that, if you can choose differently, then you can stop the feeling. And this is
Totally.
why we get the long lasting benefits as opposed to it being a sticking plaster, because people really learn to understand how and why they're creating the anxiety, not just when you're anxious, do this.
Yeah, but I think the choosing thing, I guess we're talking from a language as in this is something you are unknowingly doing. We're not saying, look, this is a decision you've made,
Yeah,
it's your fault. But I think that attitude is really important, because one of the biggest things I'll often say to somebody who's maybe in a emetophobe, health anxiety, somebody who's sort of wound themselves in and is fairly anxious right now, that this isn't your fault, right? It is your responsibility, but actually accepting where you are now, that I've got some unhelpful beliefs, I've got a bit of work to do, I am feeling anxious at the moment every morning when I wake up, because trying to fight that anxiety and then judge yourself because you feel anxious is going to just perpetuate the issue. Whereas if you can get to a point of, right, I am where I am, I'm doing something about it now, but accepting that that might be the case for the next couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, whilst I put some different mechanisms to change it, is going to make take the pressure off a bit, difference.
totally, totally. I think it's, we're digressing a little bit here, but that's a whole other podcast, isn't it? About how it's accepting anxiety. Because I know for me, it's certainly key, that just that word acceptance. Okay, and it's not forever, is it? It's not you're accepting it long term, but I can accept this now. This is actually trying to help me. This is actually, seeing it from a different perspective, seeing it as something that, you've learned to do, and you haven't meant to do it, but you have learned to do it. But if you can just tolerate it and accept it and lean into it for a bit, that's when it starts to lose its hold over you.
Yeah. It does link nicely with language, as you said before. It all dovetails
It
into
does,
each other,
yeah.
doesn't it? Because, my my language would have been, I need to get out of this. I need to run away. This feels too much. I can't deal with this. This is overwhelming. And actually, that is catastrophic language. That is language that's going to make me feel like I'm in danger.
Yeah.
So actually having some, well, first the understanding, as we've been saying, but then some language that helps us see things through, stay in situations, not have to run away is a big part of that acceptance and responding differently
Yeah, I
to how
mean,
we're feeling.
absolutely. There's, what is it, between 50 and 80,000 thoughts we all have every day. And a very negative person, you know, might have 10,000 unhelpful thoughts, catastrophic thoughts. But when you change your daily use of language to more helpful, more powerful, more positive, just these really simple things that we've talked about today, the really important message with language is those thoughts will start to disappear as well. It's one of the easiest ways of taking control over your thinking is by controlling and choosing your language well.
Yeah, for sure. So what's your summary? How do you want to end it? What do you want people to know, understand, go and do differently that will help them empower themselves around how they're speaking to themselves?
I would say listen to take some of the key phrases we've said, just the little things like that. It doesn't matter if X happens or thoughts are not facts. Write them out, stick them up everywhere, have them as reminders on your phone, you know, several times a day. But read them all the time and just remember that it's a choice and you can choose. Simple tweaks make all the difference. But what you say really does matter because you're listening all the time. So you've really got to remember that.
Yeah, yeah. And I think to add to that, this isn't like affirmations where you look in the mirror and you say, you know, life is great. Or, I guess that the reasons why you're saying here are some great phrases is they help you see things in a different way. They help you learn to cope with things. They help you learn to believe in yourself again. So it's not the phrases that are going to make any difference, but by you using those things and doing things differently, you build up better skills, better coping mechanisms.
Absolutely. And you've hit the nail on the head because they help you do things differently because you can know the program like the back of your hand. You could paraphrase the book, but if you weren't doing things differently, you're not going to see the improvements that you want. So those little phrases can just remind you to do things differently and that you can. And they're really small things, but those small incremental things, if you do them a lot, make a big difference. And then it's this lovely snowball effect of helping you feel more powerful, increasing your self-esteem. So these small tweaks in language can have a great big effect on everything else.
Yeah, fab. Super helpful, hopefully useful, hopefully inspiring. Let us know in the comments or any questions that you'd like us to answer. Please let us know. But for now, thank you very much, Philippa. That was brilliant.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.